Saturday morning at 4 a.m., I tossed my duffel bag onto the bed, started my old truck, filled it up downtown, and drove north on the highway. I promised myself I would never return, and I kept that promise for 10 years. You might wonder about my parents and family. I had worn out my welcome in that small town, and I didn't feel close to my parents, so saying goodbye was not very hard. If you're interested, let me share what happened over the next 10 years. 80 miles northwest of my hometown, I stopped to grab a burrito at a store and took US 83 to Junction. Driving through the beautiful hill country was exciting for someone like me, and Junction was a charming little town by the Llano River. I saw some girls enjoying themselves on the water, but I had my own goals. I picked up some barbecue to eat and continued west on I-10 toward Fort Stockton Pecos and my final destination. As soon as I reached Reeves County, I saw the work camps. I followed the road to a busy stop near Orla, where it took a long time to get through the traffic, even late at night. Orla had the work camps, a post office, and a truck stop where I rested in my pickup. By dawn, it was noisy and crowded. After paying for a shower and changing clothes, I drove to meet my new boss. We had met at a skills training camp when I thought I might become a college football player, but I stopped growing at 6 feet and 204 pounds, and my speed didn't impress anyone. His son, on the other hand, was 6 feet 4 inches tall with a strong throwing arm. He had a scholarship at a big school and was set to take over as the quarterback. As for me, I joined the oil field, where I really started to learn. My dad owned a small construction company that mainly did dirt work, so I began there. I operated various machines, fixed them, and moved them around. I started with front loaders and backhoes, and eventually worked my way up to dump trucks, road graders, bulldozers, earth movers, bobcats, skid steers, and fence post drivers. River, yes, that was his real name, ran a small oil field services company that took on various jobs for money, and I quickly became an asset. I could drive almost any machine he could lease or buy for a good price and fix them when they broke. He often found a job, got the needed equipment, and hired workers, training us to get the work done. I learned a lot fast. Everyone enjoyed working for River, who spent his time looking for new jobs and left Roberto in charge of the work crews. While we didn't feel as fondly about Roberto, looking back, he was a decent boss for our group. I was the only American among a diverse group of people: 6 Mexicans, 3 Salvadorans, 4 Venezuelans, and others from Central and South America. Together, we formed the largest part of our team. They said they were born here, but I didn't know if they had the right papers or if everything was legal. Honestly, it didn't matter to me. They took on jobs that no one else wanted, even with all the ads promising free rides to work, free housing, free meals, and health insurance. I noticed many of them were careful to avoid problems with the law. They drove safely, never too fast, and were polite on our rare trips to Odessa. This was a big change for me, someone known for being wild, but I didn't want to cause them any trouble, so I kept my behavior in check. I want to say this. I learned what it means to work hard from these folks. They worked long hours, even all night when needed, without complaining like my dad's workers would over any small inconvenience like the weather. No matter the conditions, we did the jobs we were hired for, and River, our boss, started getting more and better contracts. The nicer he did, the nicer he treated us. We lived in a camp located in a rough area between Orla and Mentone, with views of the Guadalupe Peak and mountains. Thankfully, we had water, sewage, and electricity, and we slept in RVs that River bought from FEMA or at auction. We had to clean and fix them up, but they were cozy, and we kept them nice. We received a food allowance, but usually bought groceries or used the food River brought for our meals. I learned a lot about cooking over an open fire or on a stove, often using whatever ingredients were on hand to make tasty dishes. While the Americans often took time off to go home or have fun, the rest of us stayed at the camp. We worked as many hours as we could, sometimes going long stretches without sleep. River would regularly bring us a truck full of food and drinks, so we didn't go out much, which helped my bank account grow from 3 digits to 5 and then 6. My bank had an investment advisor. River suggested I meet with her to help manage my savings. I did, and while I tried to charm her, she was happily married. Still, she liked my compliments and promised to let me know if anything changed. My Spanish was better than the English of my co-workers, so when we were together, we mainly spoke Spanish and a mix of Tex-Mex for safety. Away from work, they asked me to speak English to help them learn the language of what they hoped would be their new home. Sometimes, after we finished a job, River would bring us some drinks and food to cook outside. We would listen to music, play guitars and an accordion, sing songs, share stories, and talk about our dreams. Their dreams often included becoming citizens, bringing their families here, and living the American dream in a small way. Others, especially those from the area, came and went because this wasn't the life many Texans wanted. They worked until they had enough money or found the work too hard, and then they left. We migrants kept enjoying our lives, saving money and reading books in our free time. I was happy and saw myself doing this 5 years from now. Then came the day when I was free, relaxing and reading when River came by and asked me to ride with him to Carlsbad. On the way, he told me we were meeting 3 ranch owners who needed help with oil spills and that the oil companies would pay for it. He was very enthusiastic about the opportunity. "Boss man, do you really want me to talk to these wealthy people looking like this, with my unshaven face, long hair, and old boots?" I asked. "They've heard my sales pitch before. All you need to do is reassure them that we will get the job done. You'll understand once you meet them." That was my instruction. For the rest of the ride, we talked about football and his son's good year at school. When the meeting started, I was polite, apologized for how I looked, listened quietly, and spoke only when someone addressed me. My father may not have been a good role model, but he taught me to respect those in charge, and these 3 seemed to appreciate that. Finally, it was time to convince them, and they weren't sure we could do the job. River looked at me, and I decided to speak up. "Sirs, we might be a mismatched group, but if you ask anyone we've worked with, they'll say we get the job done. We work hard, pay attention to your land, leave gates as we found them, and ask for your feedback so we can improve. Mr. River here is the best boss around, and he provides us with everything we need to succeed. While we may not be experts in cleanups yet, we know every part of the operation, and we'll be your best choice in New Mexico in just a few weeks. We learn quickly. If you'd like, I can give you contact information for anyone we've worked for, and they will tell you the same, even the ones where we had to figure things out as we went. Who knows? Maybe they were already set in their ways, or perhaps I pushed them a bit, but we landed the jobs, and my guesses turned out right. We became the best in New Mexico." After that, River asked me to join him more often and put me in charge of finding, hiring, and training new workers as we got more contracts. I learned a lot over the next few years, about people working smart and how money can grow. Sure, some of my investments in oil were based on tips from insiders, and yes, I relied on River and a few wealthy friends for advice. I took some risks, but in the end, 4 years after high school, my personal savings and investments reached $2, $6 million. So I bought a fancy red pickup truck and got engaged to someone not really right for me. Oh no, I thought you knew me better. I did buy a share of River's company and helped finance our part of the equipment for a new government program to clean and reuse water. But mostly, I just kept working hard, like my mentor taught me. It was his wonderful wife who persuaded me during my second year to stop just taking online classes for my own knowledge and to get a degree. Katrina seemed quite young and beautiful to be my mother, but she treated me like one of her children. She had a serious talk with me when their son Abraham graduated from college. He was only a year older than me, and her main point was that I was too smart to be working for others and letting them earn the big money. She didn't mean River, but all those wealthy ranchers and business people I worked for. "Ask any of them," she said. "They'll tell you that you need a degree and should do something more with your life." I didn't argue that I was already doing what her husband did, making much more than many college graduates. I knew I could never win a debate with her. Still, the self-paced courses I'd been taking were meant to broaden my knowledge. I wasn't focusing on required subjects for a certificate. Instead, I took classes in psychology, history, writing, and even pre-law. Taking courses online allowed me to choose whatever I wanted, as long as I had the money and kept my grades up. I even took some law courses and read about law, like how lawyers used to prepare for their exams. Studying law wasn't as gripping as philosophy, but it taught me to listen carefully and pay attention to details. The law can be confusing, often filled with complex language that can change its meaning based on how it's interpreted. If you've ever tried to read the terms we have to accept for an app, you probably get what I mean. But let's get back to Katrina. She seemed upset that I was living alone, enjoying my freedom without a romantic partner, yet still finding affection. I didn't mention that part before. We all need some time off. Even when we work hard, there isn't enough to fill every hour. Many of my co-workers took breaks, going home whenever they could or heading to Odessa. My friends liked to hang out at local bars and dance clubs where they felt safe. I didn't care for that. Going home didn't appeal to me, and Odessa had its share of rowdy people. I got into a few scuffles there before I realized that winning a fight often meant dealing with more trouble afterward. People would talk tough and try to challenge you, but didn't know how to accept defeat. After a tough fight against 4 guys one night, I decided to create a workout space in an unused room at the office and signed up for an online self-defense course. It ended up being a good choice, as I learned self-discipline and how to handle tough situations. Feeling lonely, I started visiting smaller towns like Carlsbad, Hobbs, and Kermit. That's where I met Glenda. She was wealthy after a tragic accident that changed her life forever. Thanks to her settlement, she didn't need to work, so she opened a cafe to keep herself busy. Glenda was 10 years older than me, but she still looked like the cheerleader she once was. She wasn't dating the local guys for several reasons, including that her family lived nearby, and the local men often drank too much and boasted. Being an outsider, I caught her attention with my humor and charm. We developed a close connection, and I discovered she was quite experienced in relationships. To this day, I have never been with someone who enjoyed being close as much as she did. With some careful guidance and plenty of practice, she helped me become a better partner, and I felt pretty good about it. She was so proud of my progress that she even suggested I help out a time or two, kind of like sending bees from farm to pollinate the crops. The first time was with her sister, who was dealing with a lazy, unkind man she had married just because he was the best partner she had known. Cindy and I spent a weekend at Glenda's cabin on a mountaintop near Ruidoso. By Monday, she had hired an attorney, and the man who caused her so much trouble was asked to leave her home by a deputy sheriff on Tuesday. The next time she mentioned me helping someone, it led to quite a situation and eventually brought me here. It was a 44-year-old woman who needed some confidence after her husband left her for someone much younger, leaving her with 3 teenagers to care for. I listened to her, offered comfort, and let her cry for hours on Friday. On Saturday, I helped her feel good about herself in ways that surprised even her. By Sunday morning, she seemed a bit different, but that afternoon we enjoyed being together again, and she felt happy and confident when I took her home. Everything was fine until she shared the story with a friend who happened to be married to Tom Bean. Tom and his brother Jerry owned a large amount of land in the Delaware Basin, and we had worked for them a lot. We weren't very close, but had a friendly working relationship. So I was surprised when I received a message inviting me to dinner at Jerry's place the following Friday. I called my friend River, who laughed and said, "Who knows? Those guys are a bit wild, but if they invited you, it was likely their mothers who suggested it, so just go looking nice and polite. It might lead to more work for us." I did my best to look presentable, and the mothers, Doris and Diane, both took notice. They were sisters married to brothers and were very attractive. Still, I didn't want to ruin a good business relationship for a little excitement, especially since I already had 2 willing partners and someone helping me with my own needs. I joked around, flirted a little, and had fun until their husbands arrived and invited me into the sitting room for some whiskey. I didn't know much about it, but I was eager to learn. I listened as they discussed different types of scotch and their favorite Irish whiskeys, and I quickly picked up on the conversation. I felt a bit out of place among the wine experts, but I did my best to fit in by nodding and agreeing with what they said. The wives called us to dinner, and I found myself sitting in the middle of a long table across from a younger woman. She seemed distant, but I smiled and said hello. She gave me a dismissive look. I introduced myself, and she finally told me her name was Shay Lynn. I asked her what she studied, and she said she was a junior at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, proud to be part of Chi Omega. I wasn't sure if we were really having a conversation or if she was setting me up for some embarrassment. Still, I decided to go with it. Shay Lynn had auburn hair, pale skin, and green eyes, which made chatting with her feel less awkward, even while I wondered how her skin stayed so fair in the sunny New Mexico. "So tell me about your sorority. How many members do you have and what's your chapter called? I had never been to college, but that didn't stop me from being curious about sororities. I won't go into detail about that conversation, or the one where I found out she was changing her major for the 4th time but really believed interior design was what she was meant to do. I did notice that her family was quite entertained by her chatter and supportive of my pretended interest in their daughter. I ate and asked her questions so she could keep talking about herself. I also checked in with her family now and then to understand the purpose of this gathering. From what I gathered, they seemed to hope I would help Shay become a bit less self-centered. But I doubted I could do that. Still, I found her very attractive and was curious to see more of her. After the meal, I chose coffee instead of a stronger drink, while Shay Lin finished a large glass of a dark liquid and then had another with her family. She became more lively after the first glass, laughing and teasing during the second one. By the time she was done, it seemed clear that she was interested in me, though I noticed her family looking at me with greater intensity. When Shay Lin started leaning against me, laughing and giving me signals, her family decided it was time for them to head to bed. I'm not sure if the other women agreed, but Shay did. She took me to another room, picked some music, and placed her phone in a holder. Pleasant, slow dance music started to play, and she stepped into my arms, putting her hands around my neck and leaning close to me. My hands found a comfortable spot on her back, and she didn't seem to mind when I held her tighter. I felt a bit nervous about how easy this was, but then she lifted her chin, pulled me down, and kissed me deeply. I felt a strong reaction, and she stood on her tiptoes, getting even closer while making soft sounds in my ear. I stopped thinking about everything else as she led me down a hallway into a colorful bedroom. She was really attractive, but I had never seen her like this before. She knelt down and started being very playful, looking up at me with bright eyes. She was young, but she was surprisingly confident. I usually enjoy this kind of playful interaction as part of the moment, but I hesitated to stop her since she seemed to enjoy it. I lifted her up to kiss her again and started to help her out of her dress. My pants were still around my boots, making things a bit tricky, but she slipped away when she felt the zipper go down. She looked unhappy, and I frowned too. "I didn't agree to let you undress me," she said firmly. "I didn't agree to what you did either," I said back just as honestly. She seemed shocked. "But men enjoy that. And women who do that with strangers often expect something in return," I responded. "I'm not like that. I don't move so quickly," she argued. "This isn't even a date, but you definitely went for it. That's pretty bold by any standards." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I turned away and started to leave. "Where are you going?" she asked, as if I needed her approval. "I'm not sure, but I have better options than what just happened. I'll figure it out before I head to Texas. Nice meeting you." She seemed stunned, stammering as if she couldn't believe I would just walk away. "You can't just leave like that." I turned around, gave a small bow, and said, "May I take my leave, Your Highness?" pretending to be formal. "No," she replied. "We're not done. You need to." I cut in, mimicking a Texas accent. "Well, if that's the case, why don't we get on with what's next?" It was amusing to see her get frustrated. Clearly, she was used to getting her way with others. 2 days had passed since River and I had last heard from the Bean brothers. Jerry finally called me up, greeting me with a hearty laugh. "Boy, you sure got Queen Bee all riled up the other night. What did you do to that sweet girl?" "Nothing, Uncle Jerry, unless you count a kiss or two. We're not exactly sure what she was fussing about, but best we could figure she's upset because you came off as a bit of an inconsiderate jerk." "Well, she sure saw through me. I can't disagree with that, but I've been called worse. Quite a few times, actually. She's back at school now, so why don't you come by Tuesday night? Steak at 7 sound good? Maybe show up earlier and we'll talk business." I agreed, but couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation was going to lead to something else. It didn't make sense for her family to try setting her up with someone like me, just a regular guy who worked in the oil fields. Nothing about it added up. Later, I made my way to Tilly's place. She was home alone since her teenagers were out for their games. Without wasting time, we spent the evening together, laughing and talking, enjoying each other's company. It was clear we were both just looking for a way to unwind from the stresses of the day. After a while, we relaxed into the evening, enjoying a quiet moment of connection before parting ways. There wasn't much need for words after that. That one startled her and she fell onto me. "I'm sorry, I was just feeling really needy," she said when she calmed down a bit. "I'll take care of you in a minute." "Don't worry. I liked it too. I don't remember being taken like that before, though. What got you so excited?" "Mostly just looking forward to being with you again. But there's this guy I met who catches my interest too. I haven't gotten involved with him yet because he seems to think I'm serious, and I don't want him to see me that way. But between teasing him and thinking about you coming over, I was on edge." "So, a new guy, huh? Tell me about him." "His name is Troy Edwards, and he's a lawyer in Midland. Glenda's was so busy that I had to wait for a seat. He asked me to join him, and we hit it off. He's 40, a bit younger than me, and he has 3 daughters. His wife left him 2 years ago, and now he's raising the 3 cutest girls I've ever seen. They're 16, 14, and 12, and they're just the sweetest. When I went to meet them, they asked me to go shopping, and the oldest even said she wished she could look pretty like me. That sounds good for him. How do you feel about him? Not about his daughters, just him." "Oh, he's great. My boys were a bit cautious at first, but after he took us fishing and they met his girls, they seemed to really like him." "Then stop using me as a substitute. Have a talk with him, be honest, and then enjoy your time together. If he likes you as you are now, he'll absolutely love being with you even more." I didn't stay much longer. Her thoughts were on someone else, and her boys would be home soon, so I gave her a quick kiss and headed back to the camp. I felt a bit restless since I hadn't gotten to relax, so I finished 3 more lessons in my online courses. The Spanish course was going well, though it didn't quite match the Spanish I spoke every day. The English course was tougher since it seemed to lean more towards East Coast dialect rather than my own, but both were needed for graduation, so I kept at it and was getting good grades in both. Luckily, the Petro Skills course was short and covered gas removal, and I had the skills to get through it easily. I needed 18 more hours to graduate if I took the easiest path, and maybe that was best. Get a degree in something, then keep learning to widen my horizons. Was that the right move, though? Katrina would be upset with me if I didn't finish my degree, even if it didn't mean much in real life, so I'd likely go for it and get that piece of paper. River showed up at 8, telling me to get ready because we had a new opportunity to explore. I was glad I did because it went so well that we landed a contract right away, big enough that I would need to hire more people. Help was hard to find, but we paid well and provided good housing and working conditions. That meant I often recruited experienced workers from other companies that didn't treat them as nicely. I finished my shift at 5 and got to Uncle Jerry's by 6:03. Doris greeted me with a warm hug. I was not in the best mood after dealing with Tilly, but I let my hands wander a bit as she held on a little longer than usual. I know I shouldn't have, but it felt like she didn't mind. She wrapped her arm around me, ran her hand across my side and down my stomach, pausing at my belt. She complimented my fitness and led me to the back door. Jerry was cooking on the grill and waved me over. Before we separated, Doris playfully squeezed my side and winked at me when I glanced back. I quietly remarked, "Someone like you should know better than to tease." She smiled and replied, "Who's teasing?" before heading back to the kitchen. She looked good, and her confident attitude made her even more appealing. Jerry and I talked business while he grilled, enjoying some beers. He had 5 steaks sizzling, which meant he either had a big appetite or was expecting company. That was quickly answered when Tom and Diane came through the back gate. After greeting Tom with a handshake, I received a hug from Diane that was a bit too tight and lasted too long. Tom walked toward the grill, so I responded to Diane's friendly manner in kind and warned her again about teasing. She confidently replied, "I'm not teasing and neither is Doris. Anytime you want." I almost invited her right then and there, but that would have been rude, so I just winked at her. She left, moving playfully like her sister. When I turned back to the guys, they were all grinning at me. I grabbed a fresh beer and joined them. "You sure have some great women," I said, and they laughed. "That we do, but they are quite the flirts," Tom replied. I almost disagreed but kept quiet as we wrapped up our business before the steaks were ready. We were set to clean up more oil spills on their Artesia ranch. While this was good news, it also meant I needed to find, hire, and train more workers, which wasn't easy since skilled people willing to learn were hard to come by. We were known for treating our employees well and paying them fairly, but we also expected them to follow all the rules, those set by the landowner, the state, and federal laws, and our own company guidelines. We valued a strong work ethic and a willingness to learn. In the oil field, many workers were not very motivated, but there were also a good number of dedicated, hard-working individuals. These are the kind of people we wanted, but so did other companies. I often encountered these hard-working individuals in convenience stores and cafes where they would offer their help if I had any job openings. The challenge was that we didn't just need someone to fill a specific role. We required versatile workers who could do various tasks. The oil field is always changing, so we needed people who could drive trucks, operate machines, or weld. However, our small company needed individuals who could do all these things and more. I realized I would need to be clever in finding the right people. Even though it was risky to admit that we were short-staffed for a new project, I asked Jerry and Tom if they knew any reliable workers available for hire. They exchanged glances and chuckled. Tom said, "Actually, old man Flannery is planning to retire soon, and he has some great people. He worked on the roads, fences, and a lot of other projects for us at the Artesia Ranch. He doesn't want to stop working, but he's getting older, and both he and his wife have health issues. He mentioned yesterday that he wanted to help his workers find new jobs since they all have families to care for. Should I call him and introduce you?" Tom made the call, and it was a success. Flannery had 13 workers he strongly recommended, 3 he was unsure about, and 2 he didn't think would be a good fit. Even so, having 16 extra hands would really help clean up the Artesia Ranch, as long as they were willing to learn and take on other tasks. The meal was excellent, featuring well-chosen steaks, southwestern salad, guacamole, and steamed asparagus. The conversation flowed easily and was quite enjoyable. Tom and Jerry both had degrees in agriculture and business from New Mexico State. Doris and Diane graduated from Texas Tech. They were sorority sisters who met the Bean brothers at a football game during their senior year. The brothers were invited by a friend with a luxury box, while the sisters were guests of a wealthy couple they referred to as aunt and uncle because their families were close friends. The brothers noticed the sisters in the buffet line, decided to approach, and introduced themselves at the dessert table. It took a few dates to figure out who was right for who, but there was no shortage of attraction. Once they figured it out, serious dating began, followed by deep feelings and eventually engagement. The joint weddings in Albuquerque, a month after graduation, were amazing. The older Beans shared part of their wealth with the couples as wedding gifts. Tom and Diane received the family home, which had been empty for over 10 years, while Jerry was able to build a new place for himself and Doris with help from his parents. The Edwards, the girls' parents, gave them a month-long trip to Europe and the Mediterranean, luxurious SUVs, and built impressive trust funds for their future children. They were wealthy from solar and wind energy, not oil and gas, but both families had plenty of money. Even though they grew up with money, all 4 kids were very down to earth. I learned that Shaylin had a bit of a snobby side. There was little talk about her cousin Julie, who was Doris and Jerry's daughter. Julie was studying medicine at a prestigious college in New England and rarely visited home. The Beans hoped she would return to practice medicine, but they worried that the excitement of New York City would be too appealing for her to resist. I laughed at that, and someone asked why. If she's as attractive as her mom and smart enough to do well in a top college, recruiters will be all over her. I'm here by choice because I love it and appreciate the land. You all grew up here, but let's face it, shopping in Midland is nothing compared to the best places in New York, and the nightlife in Carlsbad is not the same as in Manhattan. And how do you know that? Your favorite nightlife is in Kermit, and you've never been east of Sterling City, let alone New York City, Doris said. He noticed the comment about Kermit, but stayed quiet. There are these incredible things called television and the internet where I can watch shows and movies. I've seen places like New York City, London, Berlin, Rome, and the Greek islands from my recliner outside Orla. Shopping NYC is one of my favorite things to watch, and I love the series NYC at Night. There are some lovely people enjoying life in that city. From what we hear from River, you could easily join them instead of spending weekends in Kermit, Diane replied. Not for long. Those folks have a different lifestyle. Besides, there are wonderful people right here like you two and at Glenda's place. I have no reason to spend money in the city when I can enjoy the company of great people within an hour's drive. I'm a simple man with simple tastes. So what are your plans, young man? I hear you have about 150 college credits, but no degree. And Katrina is worried that you're just going to keep learning and learning without ever getting your bachelor's degree, Doris asked, sounding a bit like Katrina when she had asked the same questions. To keep Miss Katrina happy, I'm working on the last 18 hours I need to graduate. Having a degree won't really make me any more prepared for my job than if I just kept taking classes on different topics, but it will satisfy her, so I'm going to do it. I'll probably finish by summer, even though 9 of the required hours are classroom hours, meaning I have to attend online classes with a professor and other students. That makes things slower, but it's not the first time I've taken online classes with attendance rules. Right now, I'm getting an A in all of them. But I might get my first B because I have a new professor who doesn't like to be questioned. I just want to ask some easy questions to understand better. So, what degree are you working on and which online school is giving it to you? Doris asked, sounding a bit critical. My classes come from several online schools, so I have many options. Texas Tech is a bit more flexible, so they are giving me a degree in criminal justice with a focus on legal studies. It's a sort of plan for law without actually going to law school. And let me explain useless. I don't mean the classes are pointless for my job. I mean that the degree doesn't prove I learned more than if I had just taken the same classes without the degree. With how legal things have become in my field, understanding the law better will be useful, so I won't stop taking helpful or interesting classes after graduation. I'm fairly young, healthy, single, and I have a good group of friends and acquaintances. I enjoy my job and don't spend a lot of money, so I've saved and invested what I earn. I grew up without much, but I don't plan to live that way forever. As I tell River, Miss Katrina isn't my mother, but she is someone I respect. I'm letting her guide me into getting my degree. It doesn't mean much to River, Tom, Jerry, or anyone I work with, and I won't brag about it. It's just a piece of paper saying I did what I needed to do to get it. Looking around the table, I realized I might have been mistaken. Doris and Diane had wide eyes, and Tom and Jerry were looking at me differently. Doris spoke first. You're getting a criminal justice degree from Texas Tech with a focus on pre-law, and you have a 4.0 GPA? Does your favorite friend know that? Well, not exactly. She often says to get a degree, so I'm working on that to please her. She mentioned that it doesn't matter which degree, so we haven't talked about it further, and I'd like you to keep it between us. River and I plan to take her shopping in Lubbock and surprise her at my graduation. Okay, we'll keep it a secret, but only if you get us tickets. We might not be your favorite friends, but we want to be there too, Diane exclaimed. I would be honored, I replied, then smiled at Tom and Jerry. You both are at the top of my favorite list, but I don't know your husbands as well as I know River. He understands that his wife has a playful side, and he prefers she flirts with me than someone else, so he encourages it. I know your husbands find you lovely, but I'm not sure how they would feel about me being playful with you, much less mentioning you on my special list. Come on, do you think we don't know you appreciate beautiful women or that our wives aren't flirts? Sometimes Doris looks at you like you're something special, and I've seen you check her out too. We're not jealous, or we wouldn't have married such lively ladies. Just keep it friendly like you have, get them excited, and we'll keep pretending we don't know, right, Tom? Diane made a sad face. So we can't take this strapping young man upstairs and give him a few tips? Tom smiled. I think you're a bit behind if that's your goal, considering his relationship with Miss Glenda, her sister and friends. Yeah, and don't say it would help our relationships because you just use what you learned to add some fun to ours, like Linda did with Les, Jerry joked. Hey, don't look at me. I don't know Linda and Les, I assured them, pretending to be offended. They laughed, and then Diane said, That happened in Las Vegas. Linda is a striking blonde who spent some time with a charming guy while Les was winning money at the casino. When he found her, she jokingly said she was going to stay with this guy, who was going to show her things she hadn't experienced before. But she would return to Les afterward to give him some lessons. The guy she was with was sitting next to her, looking sure of himself. He was much bigger than Les and thought that would keep Les from doing anything about it. That turned out to be a big mistake, Diane explained. Yeah, he didn't realize Les is a tough guy from El Paso who has been in a lot of disagreements in his life, Tom chuckled. Not to mention he got those strong muscles from hard work, not a gym. He took a step forward, knocked the person off the stool with one quick move, kicked him a few times, and then pulled Linda toward the nearest elevator, saying he would show her some new things. Doris continued. Les knew a lot, But he held back because Linda was shy and not used to things when they got married. He didn't want to treat her poorly. Linda said he was rough with her and pushed her too far, telling her that if she wanted to be treated badly, he would do just that. After a couple of hours, she was pleading for him to stop, but he didn't listen. She says it lasted for 2 more hours, and she couldn't walk properly for a week afterward. They are very open about what happened, and Linda admits she's a free spirit at heart, so we use their story to teach others, Jerry added. I looked confused and asked, "How is this a lesson?" "It sounds like wives might want to try something new with other guys to see what their husbands are hiding." The 2 couples laughed and agreed, mentioning they had done this a few times themselves. "We both have a wild side just waiting to be let out," Diane said with a playful smile. "They enjoy unleashing it and then bringing it back in." "Well, I don't see how I'd fit into all of this, but if you ever need someone to check if there's something missing in your education, let me know and I'll be happy to help." Neither responded to my offer, and the rest of spring flew by as we hired and trained new teams. All 16 of Flannery's men proved to be skilled workers, and one guy he had doubts about turned out to be a clever young Apache with strong leadership skills. By April, he was leading his own team and was great with the drone and the data it provided. River and I had big plans for him, and we made that clear. I introduced him to online learning, and he quickly warmed up to it when he realized he didn't have to wait for others, like he did back in school on the reservation. He had some gaps in his education, but he had a sharp mind, didn't waste time on bad habits, and loved being introduced to a whole new world. Like me, he wanted to explore everything and was amazed by the new ideas and challenges he encountered. We became close friends, and Miss Katrina gained another young man to care for. I'm not sure how it became May 12th so quickly, but it did, and we took Katrina on her shopping trip to Lubbock. She was very happy to see that Diane, Doris, Glenda, Cindy, and Tilly, with Troy, were also in town for a shopping trip. In her excitement, she used River's credit card quite a bit. However, it felt worth it when we went out to have fun in the Depot District. I couldn't really say which woman looked the best, because that's different for everyone. I did notice that men were very interested in them wherever we went, and they always had dance partners. I danced with each of them a few times, and they definitely kept me on my toes. We all stayed at the same hotel, which had a free brunch buffet. I made an excuse to leave before 11, went to my room to get ready, and then headed to the United Supermarkets arena. They organized us and explained what would happen and then brought us to a waiting area. When it was our turn, we were led in and seated. I noticed a large group cheering for me, sitting in great seats near the stage. In that group were River and Katrina's son, Abe, and his fiancée. When I waved at them with a smile, Katrina shook her fist at me, but it seemed like she was a bit emotional. I made a heart gesture to her, and she held her heart back. I think she was proud of me. The big guy next to me, a tight end on the football team, was also looking at the group. He asked, "Hey, I hope this doesn't offend you, but that's the most impressive group of women I've ever seen together. How are you related?" I laughed and said, "Not offended at all. I just know them all through friendship, and I care for them like family since I didn't have much of one myself. How about your family?" He pointed to a section across the gym and mentioned that his group was larger and included some lovely women. He showed me his fiancée and his mother and joked about his sisters being a handful, but he smiled as he said it. I told him everyone looked lovely, and I jokingly offered to help him with his sisters if he wanted. He turned me down, but promised to introduce me after the ceremony. We chatted off and on during the long wait. I felt proud wearing my graduation gown, hearing myself announced as graduating magna cum laude, and hearing cheers from my friends and their partners. I can't really prove it, but I think people in my hometown wouldn't believe I graduated with high honors from Texas Tech University or anywhere else. Chad's family was much louder than mine, but that was because his sisters were all cheerleaders, he explained as we walked outside the arena. I was waiting to meet my friends outside a gate, and another group was gathering there too. One guy, who seemed friendly, really wanted to introduce our two groups. I'm not sure how we became close so quickly, but he seemed like a great person. I thought hugs were nice before, but Katrina showed me how much better they could be. My red polo shirt and dress got a bit wet as she told me how proud she was, how upset she was that I hadn't told her things, how happy she felt, and how much she cared for me while some tears fell on me. When Katrina let me go, Cindy quickly hugged me next, and it was very intense. Glenda followed, and when I turned to Diane and Doris, I felt a bit embarrassed. They seemed to enjoy being close to me, which made me a bit uneasy when I needed to introduce myself to some men and say hello to Abe's fiancée, Allison. Luckily, by that time, I wasn't feeling too awkward anymore, but her presence made me feel flustered again, and she gave me a mischievous smile. Katrina was excitedly sharing how she encouraged me to get my degree and how I sometimes brushed her off. Then I graduated with honors. The others confessed they only recently found out I was even in school, and Glenda mentioned that she had thought I was typical for my line of work when we first met. So she was surprised to see my achievement. I thought we were celebrating my graduation, but it felt more like a funny roast. Fortunately, Chad and his friends arrived just in time, and the friendly introductions took over the teasing. Chad put his arm around me and said, "Everyone, meet my new friend Theo. Now let's hear your names while I say hello to his family." His dad was really big, his mom was beautiful, and his fiancée was stunning. Then I faced 3 sisters. I reached out my hand to the first sister, but she cut me off. "Oh, we know who you are, Mr. Theodore Monroe Carr, a magna cum laude graduate in criminal justice. It was on the big board before Chad announced it. I'm Angela." She moved past my handshake and leaned against me closely. She hugged me tightly, and I felt a little uncomfortable. She laughed, whispered, "You're easy to fluster," and then passed me to the second sister, Kelly, who also gave me a strong hug and giggled before handing me off to the third sister, a cheerful blonde girl. By the time Shannon let me go, I was feeling quite eager and ready to show her what happens when you make fun of wild creatures. Luckily, Chad's fun grandparents were next, and they joked about their teasing granddaughters. They praised me for graduating at the top of my class and asked me where I lived. When I said Orla, and mentioned this was my first time on campus, they were very interested in my story. River and Chad's dad were laughing loudly, insisting that fate must have brought us together since we both had reservations at the same steakhouse. It was time to head out. Everyone went to their vehicles, which were mostly SUVs and nice pickups. I had treated myself to a fancy pickup, last year's GMC HD 2500 Denali with 4-wheel drive. I never thought I would own something like that, but the last owner had a little accident with it before selling. He had brought it home, then used it to tow his boat to the lake, where he had a minor collision. The insurance company was keen to fix it up, but he and his wife decided to take a settlement to buy a brand new one. After some back and forth, he got his offer and went for a new truck. It was great to have some extra cash, right? The body shop assured me there was no serious damage, and they showed me what they had done to fix the truck. I paid about half what the last owner did, but many people were hesitant to buy it because of the accident, so it was headed for auction. I bought it for a little over the minimum and drove it off feeling proud. I felt even better when my mechanic checked it out and gave it a clean bill of health. All my friends had rides to the ceremony, so it looked like I would be alone until the 3 girls offered to ride with me. By then, I was starting to rethink what I thought about them. They asked a lot of questions and joked around, but they were genuinely curious, nice, and really friendly, on top of being attractive. I know it seems odd to say that, but you can be pretty and not friendly, and you can be friendly and pretty at the same time, just like these 3 cheerleaders. Angela was a 22-year-old senior, Kelly was 20 and a junior, and Shannon was 18, a freshman. I was trying to focus on driving, especially with the great company and their stylish outfits that showed off their legs and arms. My chance to closely look at legs was just with Angela, who I called Angie, sitting next to me in my nice pickup truck. I could see the upper bodies of her younger sisters in the mirror behind us. After taking a good look, I thought they looked great. Angie didn't like that I was noticing her sisters, so she turned around to chat with them. Her left knee was touching the side of the truck while her right foot rested on the floor. I could see her smooth leg, and I could guess what she wore underneath. The lane warning beeped while I was distracted, so I quickly steered back to my lane. I tried to ignore their laughter and not crash my fancy truck again. That lovely leg was hard to overlook, but I just took quick peeks, even though my curiosity kept growing. The GPS said to turn right, then told me we had arrived at our destination. Like a true gentleman, I rushed to open the door for Shannon, then for Kelly, and finally for Angie. I won't go into details about what I saw, but it was quite a sight. I would have plenty to think about for weeks. Glenda and Cindy, who were about 15 years older, pulled me away from the others and sat me between them before anyone noticed. This made Angie and her sisters a bit upset. They started to tease me and act like we had a special bond that was unusual for someone my age. Katrina surprised me when she pulled my chair back, sat on my lap, and gently scolded me for not telling her about my plans for graduation. She thought I wasn't interested in it at all, especially in pre-law, I corrected her, explaining that pre-law was just a path at school and that my degree was in criminal justice with a focus on legal studies. She then asked if I had chosen a law school. I had to clarify that I hadn't. I told her that Texas is one of the states where you can take the bar exam without a law degree, and I was thinking about reading the law and maybe taking the exam someday. She offered to pay for law school, but I explained that I had the funds. I could make just as much money during the 3 years in school due to the contracts we already had and those we were expecting. She switched between playfully bothering me and giving me kisses for a bit, and then River came to pick her up. The waiter came to take our drink orders. Most people chose beer, wine, or mixed drinks, but I stuck with sweet tea. I had been drunk once before, and I didn't want to feel that way again. I knew the next stop on our graduation party was a dance hall. I planned to enjoy a little drink there and dance as much as I could with the lovely women around. Doris and Diane both sat on my lap, playfully acting out some moments from Katrina's story, including some kissing and gentle teasing. They giggled and leaned in closer, giving me soft kisses. I glanced at their husbands each time, but they just shook their heads and smiled. With the married women out of the way, the single ones began to get closer, taking turns playfully touching my leg. Angela looked at me with a serious expression. Kelly smiled back at me, and Shannon seemed curious, eager for more fun. It seemed like she wanted to show she could keep up with the older women, or was hoping to learn from me. Shannon was full of energy and excitement. Kelly was more like a sorority queen, slightly taller and slimmer than Shannon, fitting the modern idea of beauty, though she somehow seemed less appealing than the others. Big Sis appeared to be the most studious and ambitious, more mature, and less likely to be interested in someone like me. Right now, she seemed curious about me, but I knew that wouldn't go anywhere, and rightly so. I came from a working-class background, while she was from a wealthy family. We were an unlikely pair, especially since I planned to hang my diploma in my trailer and go back to the job that had helped me escape poverty and offered a chance for a better life. I doubted she would see my 32-foot trailer in Orla as her dream home, even though it had extra room and features my childhood home didn't have. It had working toilets, a stove with all the burners, and beds that were more comfortable than what I grew up with. I kept it cleaner by sweeping daily and mopping every other day, compared to my childhood home, where cleaning happened maybe once a month or whenever we ran out of clean dishes. I didn't know much about their family, but since Chad went to a prestigious high school in Dallas and his dad was a senior partner in a well-known law firm, I made certain assumptions about them. It didn't really matter to me. I was just looking for some fun, not a serious relationship. After eating, drinking, and sharing stories that started off embarrassing and eventually turned into bragging, we passed the time. Our plans for the dance hall were set for 7, so we went back to our rooms to relax, freshen up, and change into casual clothes. What was supposed to be a 3-hour break turned into some unexpected fun with Glenda and Cindy, who needed to head back to Kermit by 6. That left me with just an hour to regroup, freshen up, and change. To be honest, I wasn't really thinking about anything exciting when I joined the group downstairs. Since everyone planned to drink a lot, River had arranged for a van to take us to the Wild Wild West and back. After my earlier excitement, I felt drained. But seeing 3 confident women and Abe's fiancé in their stylish outfits definitely caught my interest once again. When Chad's group arrived, I realized I was feeling energized. Chad's mom and grandmother were both attractive, and his fiancé, like Abe's, was beautiful. Not to mention Chad's 3 sisters, who were quite impressive too. You might think that mothers and grandmothers dancing with a recent college grad would be proper and reserved, like a simple mother-son dance at a wedding, but that wasn't the case. Even Katrina got a little flirtatious with me, whispering playful comments in my ear, and the Edwards sisters were even more lively. I was surprised when Chad's elegant mom took me to the far side of the dance floor and playfully danced close to me. Even more surprising was her grandmother, who looked much younger than her age, doing the same. The biggest shock came from both fiancés, who hinted at creating a memorable graduation experience if I came to visit them, leaving me with quite an intriguing thought. I wasn't sure if they were serious or just teasing, but it was confusing for someone like me who believes in genuine connections. Anyway, having these wonderful women with privilege offering attention to a regular guy like me was quite overwhelming. I had to work hard for every date I had in high school, and no one ever told me I looked like a movie star. In my mind, I was just an average guy with sandy blonde hair, a regular face, blue-green eyes, and a fit body from many years of hard work. My father had me working at a young age, sorting parts and supplies for the mechanics. By 8, I was driving forklifts. By 10, I was handling smaller machinery, and by 13, I operated heavy equipment. I played football, basketball, and ran track in junior high and high school, as the alternative was working after school until dark. My father let me take a step back because I had grown too big and strong for him to handle, and my younger brothers could do the chores. I was good at sports, which earned him respect in our town. Even though I didn't become his favorite or get weekends off, my strength kept him from being harsh with me or anyone else if I was around. Being good at sports made my brothers envious, as well as the other boys in school. I did enjoy some attention, but it wasn't anything special. Honestly, if there had been an award for me, it might have been something like Most Troublemaker or Most Likely to End Up in Trouble. I was a troublemaker. I did get into fights and broke a few rules. I was never voted for Homecoming King or Most Popular, but I really didn't care. All I wanted was my diploma and to leave that place. My mother was timid and often drank too much. She didn't really love any of us. She had children for my father out of fear and lived in sadness, wishing for a way out. Once I grew up, I put a stop to his mistreatment of her and the loud arguments. You might think that would make her a better mother or at least grateful, but she just continued to cook for us and drink every night. I don't know what has happened to them since I left town 7 years ago, and I don't want to. I'm building a new life here, and that's where my focus is. I've left that town and those people behind. It's strange that so many bitter memories came back tonight, on what should be a joyful evening. When I faced the elegance of the Barnes women, it reminded me of my past, and I started to feel down. An hour later, I shook off my bad feelings and danced with Kelly once, Shannon twice, and Angie 3 times. I was feeling better and enjoying the music and company when something happened on the dance floor. Shannon was upset and slapped a guy who responded rudely. My friends Chad and Abe were nearby, which turned out to be helpful because the disrespectful guy was with a group of friends. I defended Shannon, landing a solid punch to one guy and kicking another in the knee. Just as I was dodging a hit from a third person, he fell to the ground. It was 3 of us against a larger group, but then Daddy Barnes, River, and the Bean brothers showed up. Chad knew a lot of martial arts, and Abe was skilled in kickboxing, so they were holding their own in the fight. I had taken a light hit to the eye and another to my mouth, but I mostly dodged them, so I felt lucky up to that point. Still, there were quite a few people who wanted to take me on. Daddy Barnes was a big guy, just like you would expect from someone who played in the NFL. He grabbed people, held them in strong embraces for a moment, and then tossed them aside. River, Tom, and Jerry were tough fighters who didn't follow any special rules, causing some people to wince in pain before being knocked down, while others were on the floor holding their legs or knees. At first, a lot of our friends joined the fight, but once the older men arrived, more people gathered as spectators, and the number of fighters shrank until it was just us and the police who arrived in large numbers. Since we were still standing, we were the ones taken away despite our friends protesting. We were lucky there was a judge available at night to handle our case and set bail, which our friends paid, or we would have spent the weekend in jail. We started the night as friends and ended it as a close-knit group. I appreciated Daddy Barnes giving me a big hug, telling me I was brave, and thanking me for helping his youngest daughter. Meanwhile, Katrina and Mama Barnes were taking care of my bleeding lip and eyebrow, alternating between scolding me for getting into a fight and praising me for defending Shannon. I was worried about getting a criminal record since many of the landowners and companies we worked for didn't allow anyone with a record on their properties. I shouldn't have worried. By noon Monday, the Barnes law firm had made sure all charges were dropped. The security footage and statements from bystanders would have cleared us anyway, but I felt certain that this incident would soon be forgotten after Chad Sr. and Chad Jr. took care of everything with the police and the court. Angela thought I was foolish for jumping into such a situation, while Kelly found the whole event amusing, especially seeing her dad in a bar fight. Mama Barnes was protective of her daughter and kept giving her husband fierce looks that hinted that he would be in for a good night. The two fiancés didn't realize their partners could be so fearless and held on to them tightly. Despite Katrina's warnings to me and River, the three mothers seemed more excited than upset, and their husbands showed no regret. And what about Shannon, the one who set this all off? Between moments of crying from the pain and embarrassment of being hit, she held ice to her cheek and shot me looks that were intense. I figured every one of those looks stirred something in me, and I stopped checking on her, worried her parents would notice and send me away again. By Sunday morning, we finally arrived back at the hotel, and we planned to meet for brunch at 11. I was practically the only guy there who looked well-rested, confirming my thoughts from the police station. Angela seemed to think that maybe I wasn't so reckless after all, especially with the swollen cheek and black eye that Shannon had. Mom even asked if she wished I had stepped in if it had been her instead. Kelly found it funny, but she also seemed to flirt more than usual. Shannon kept her head and cheek covered with a hoodie, trying to hide her face. She really warmed up when I told her how brave she was for standing up to someone much bigger than her. I also said she was so beautiful that she should take self-defense classes like Chad, and her sisters should too. After brunch, we all started saying our goodbyes, sharing hugs and promises and going our separate ways. Angela slipped her phone number into my pocket. Kelly asked me to contact her on Instagram or Facebook, and Shannon left her phone number in my pocket wrapped in a cloth, then innocently gave me her Instagram handle and said she was staying in Lubbock to meet her new roommate. It all seemed innocent enough, except for the cloth. When I took it out in my pickup, it had a surprising scent. A quiet voice in my head reminded me she was too young, but a louder one insisted she was 18 and that everything was fine. I headed straight to Kermit, with the cloth dangling from my rearview mirror as an air freshener. I chose the longer route through Hobbs and western New Mexico instead of waiting forever at a busy intersection. Tom called, offering to buy me dinner in Hobbs, but I turned it down to rest my bruised lip and eye. He agreed, but only if I promised to have dinner at their house on Friday. I happily accepted when he mentioned his special recipe for prime rib, claiming it was the best in New Mexico, and Diane's scalloped potatoes being the best anywhere. You'd think I would have caught on by now, but I just kept wandering around without realizing anything. Once home, with ice packs on my face, I called the number to thank her for the air freshener. She giggled and asked how my face was healing, and I avoided mentioning that it would be days or weeks for both of us to feel better. She insisted she could not show up to meet her new roommate and her parents looking like this tomorrow. She needed to find a way to fix it quickly or cover it up. Sweetheart, you're beautiful. A little color around your eye and a swollen spot on your cheek only drops you from a 12 to a 10. So don't worry. Just use matching eyeshadow on the other eye and cover up the discoloration with some makeup. You can tell them a funny story about how you stood up for yourself at your brother's graduation party and how your brother, father, and some friends stepped in to help you when someone got too rough. They will either be shocked that a stranger treated you badly and proud of your family for supporting you, or you might need to find a new roommate. You don't want to spend the year with someone who looks down on you for defending yourself. She smiled at my compliment and seemed pleased with my makeup ideas. She mentioned that she might go to a spa in the morning before her roommate arrived to get some professional help. Once that was settled, I asked about cheerleading practice, how she made the team, whether she was joining the same sorority as her sisters, and other simple questions to gauge her personality. Being the youngest in a wealthy family usually means a bit of self-involvement, but I wanted to know if she could be more than just that. As she talked about her high school clubs and activities, I was taken aback. Yes, she had been a cheerleader for 4 years, and head cheerleader in her senior year, won prom queen, was voted most beautiful, and was a favorite of the class all 4 years. But she was also class president for 3 years, and student body president in her final year, went to state for debate, and lettered in tennis despite not being able to play in the fall because of cheerleading. Honestly, I was surprised I had underestimated her so much. I felt bad for judging her based on looks and family background. She put me on hold to book the spa appointment, then came back to ask about my childhood, my family, what I do for work, and my future plans. I gave my usual vague answers to keep my family details private, but shared that I excelled in basketball, was named to a second-team all-state football list, and participated in track and field events. Then she asked the question I expected: why didn't I go to college? I told her the easy answer was money. We didn't have any. The scholarship offers were from small schools far away or not very good ones in Texas. So I decided to go work in the oil fields and figure things out later. She pointed out that she knew I was not being completely honest about my family and my lack of interest in college. She asked some smart questions to learn more without showing that she doubted me. She was curious about my friendship with Katrina and River, and that my close friends were migrants from Venezuela, Central America, and Mexico. She also saw that the Beans, who were supposed to be clients helping celebrate my graduation, were just part of my story, and she teased me about my attempts to explain how Glenda and Cindy were just friends I made at Glenda's Cafe in Kermit. I responded by saying, even if there was more between us, I wouldn't admit it because I try to be respectful. They are lovely women I admire and care about, so let's leave it at that and talk about something else. She quickly changed the topic to my online studies. She was impressed that I could earn credits for so many challenging courses without having a professor or teaching assistants to help. Shannon, everyone learns in their own way. I learn best when I work alone, solving problems independently, and seeing course material as a way to grow my knowledge, not just to earn credit. Many prefer the classroom, but most of my classroom time felt unproductive back home. I like flexible, challenging courses that apply to real life. Of course, that doesn't apply to subjects like philosophy, history, or social sciences, which are meant to make you think and challenge your ideas. She took my words to heart, and we spent the next hour in a friendly debate, the kind where you listen to each other's views before arguing against them. She was young and hadn't had much experience with this, but I could see she was very smart and had a sharp mind. Before I knew it, it was midnight, and I had an important job to start in 6 hours. We ended our call promising to chat more, and I went to bed wondering what kind of situation I had gotten into. The job went well, mostly because I had a great team, and I left when everyone else did at 5 o'clock. I was surprised to see a black Jeep Wrangler parked in front of my trailer, and a couple of smiling friends were sitting on my back deck enjoying some drinks with a cheerful woman. My grill was going, and there were several covered dishes on the table. I parked in front, took a look at the Wrangler, and walked around to the back. Welcome, my friend. Your guest arrived early enough for us to clean your dirty grill and prepare some sirloin burgers for the party you are hosting to introduce your friends to this lovely young lady. I'm sorry to say she arrived just as we finished at 2, so we had plenty of time to clear up some of the misunderstandings she had about you. Not all, but most. Now go greet her and start on the burgers. I'm really hungry. I walked right into the first question. How did you find this place, Miss Barnes? Well, there's this thing called a map program that showed me Orla and how to get here through Kermit, where everyone at Glenda's Cafe seemed to know all about you. Some were even more informed about your background than you were and were happy to share. I would have been here by 1, but they wouldn't stop telling me your life story. The owner was especially knowledgeable, and she gave me step-by-step directions on how to get here. And here I am. Well, welcome, but I don't think you want a welcome hug before I shower and change clothes. Meanwhile, you all can put the burgers on since you organized this party. Always so lazy. I went back to the front and through the house, shaved, showered, and changed into something nice for the occasion. When I came back out, tables and chairs filled my dirt backyard, and a mix of people, including a few Americans like Katrina, River, Abe, and Isabel, his fiancée, were enjoying drinks and chatting in a mix of languages. Shannon was on the deck sipping a beer and acting as a hostess. There was even a sign in Spanish congratulating me on graduating from college. What's going on? Then I saw Katrina's beaming smile and River's big grin. I walked over and hugged both, then greeted my unexpected guest. With a raised eyebrow, she explained, "We spent too much time on my cell phone plan last night. I thought we could talk in person tonight. Meeting all your friends is just a bonus." "All right, but since you're here and I'm cooking, you're going to help me feed everyone. So wash your hands, put on an apron, and let's get to work." No, we were just teasing you. I'm the cook and everything else is ready, Alexandro interrupted. Sit back with the lovely girl, enjoy a drink, and relax. As I walked into the room, I noticed Shannon sitting among our friends Katrina, River, Abe, Isabel, and several others, her face marked by a recent bruise that didn't detract from her beauty. The story behind her injury quickly became the center of attention. Abe and his dad started recounting the evening's events, explaining how I had intervened when a towering man confronted Shannon at a local bar, managing to de-escalate the situation with a swift response. The tale grew more colorful as River described how Abe and Chad had hurried over to help, their actions seemingly larger than life as they handled the crowd with unexpected vigor. Chad, a former professional football player, and the others, including River, reportedly managed to hold their own until only our group and the arriving police were left standing. Katrina and Shannon told about how the police initially detained us, misunderstanding the situation, but were eventually persuaded by our friends and evidence that we had acted in defense of Shannon. She emotionally recounted how she had defended herself on the dance floor from an inappropriate advance, a moment that turned the police in our favor and rallied support from those who heard her story. The evening wound down with discussions of personal stories and plans for the next day, with Shannon eventually choosing to stay with a friend nearby instead of driving back late. Our group, though tested by the events, found a moment to bond and support each other, ending the night with a sense of unity and camaraderie. She looked beautiful in her short dresses and shorts, but even more stunning without them. Imagine her shapely figure, with lovely curves that drew attention. She had a tiny waist and hips that curved out dramatically. I enjoyed running my hands over her smooth skin, which made her smile and squirm playfully. Her legs were remarkable, and the way her thighs and hips met was captivating. Exploring this perfection took time, and I found her natural scent so pleasant that I couldn't help but take a moment to appreciate it, which made her laugh. When I saw her, my senses came alive. However, there was a part of me that reminded me not to get carried away. She came from a well-off family, had gone to college, and had many opportunities ahead of her. I understood that hoping for something more was unrealistic for someone like me. Still, I couldn't help but enjoy the moments we shared. As for the landscape where we were eastern New Mexico in May, it's a vast area known for its oil production. It's a place where a lot of natural resources are mined, especially potash. I shared this information with my companion, who was dressed for the hot 100-degree weather. Her sandals, red shorts, and white tank top caught everyone's eye at the work sites, especially since they had already seen her at my party. On the second day, I was asked to stop by Jerry's house to go over the final contracts and enjoy a cold drink and a burger. I told Tom that I would be happy to help, but my intern was with me and we were not dressed for a party, even a casual one. He said that was no problem. I really believed he and Jerry would be fine with it, but I wasn't so sure about the two ladies. They looked amazing, but their flashy outfits might make people uncomfortable. I wasn't certain. The young woman wanted to go back to the trailer to change, but we were far from Jerry's house, and it was quite a distance from the trailer, so I had to say no. Then she insisted I take her somewhere to buy clothes, and I told her to find a map to see where the closest store was. She did, frowned, and told me I had to stop somewhere so she could fix her makeup, or there would be issues. I stopped at a small truck stop and convenience store. While I filled up with diesel, she rushed through the store like a whirlwind, turning heads everywhere, and went to the restroom. She came back 10 minutes later and everyone was watching her. With a big smile, she stood in front of me by the work truck and asked, "Well?" I looked her over, from her shoes to her shorts and shirt, finally meeting her gaze. "You looked different when you went in, but now you look great. Should we go get some food?" She playfully hit my arm and called me silly, then waited for me to open the door. "Oh, now you're fancy, huh? Just a bit of makeup and you want me to be a gentleman?" I said with a raised eyebrow while opening her door. She tried not to laugh as she climbed in. She adjusted the visor to check her reflection, took a selfie, decided she looked good enough, then settled into the middle seat. With a teasing tone, she asked, "What's this scoring system for women? I've always been told I was a 10 until you came along. I rate looks, brains, and personality, each up to 4 points, with an extra point for something really special in each area. Figure it out," I explained. She thought for a moment while I drove quickly to our destination, then pinched my leg. So where am I not measuring up? Looks, brains, or personality? Oh, you're a solid 4 in each, plus a bonus point for being exceptional. But I do have to take off points for being 18 and a college freshman. Before you asked to ride with me, I was worried about your age and your background. You come from a well-off family in Dallas, and I wasn't sure how you'd fit in. But after spending 2 days driving through western Texas and eastern New Mexico with you, I have changed my mind a little. You ask good questions, care about what we're doing, and you can talk to everyone around us with ease, whether it's the workers in the oil fields or the wealthy ranch owner. That's pretty impressive for someone so young. You really are tough to please, aren't you? So tell me how I went into a store restroom and came out looking so great. I hate to say it, but I had to give you some credit for your looks. She playfully hit me on the arm and laughed, resting her golden hair on my shoulder. I didn't mention it, but I admired her fun personality too. When we got to the backyard, everyone was already there, including River and his pickup truck, which meant Katrina was there too. We walked around the corner and halfway to the group before they noticed us. The ladies wore light sundresses, and the men wore shorts and t-shirts, so we fit in pretty well. Still, our arrival quieted down the conversations and drew attention. Since I had worn my usual boots and shorts before, I figured people were looking at the lovely girl with me. She handled the attention like a pro, and as we reached the group, she greeted everyone with hugs and friendly words, complimenting how lovely each woman looked and expressing her happiness to see each man. It was clear that it was hard not to like her. River quickly jumped in with a joke. So, Theo, when did I start paying you to take a beautiful young woman around instead of doing actual work? Meet my intern, boss. She's a freshman studying petroleum engineering at Texas Tech University. She wanted to ride with me to see the Permian Basin and learn about the jobs that keep the oil industry running. So far, I'm giving her a B. She's bright, asks sharp questions, and makes good points. The only issue is that she seems to cause some pauses in work at each site, but I think the workers come back motivated and excited after explaining their jobs to her, so maybe that's worth it. In any case, I've been getting good feedback about her work. I'm sure you are, Tom chimed in, but I hope she hasn't caused too much trouble. I'm still tired and sore from the last one. She gave him another hug, called them her helpers, and thanked them again. The women smiled and rolled their eyes a bit, but they understood having a young person like her around. Married men try their best, but they still can't help but watch someone like Shannon. I noticed it, and so did their wives, but there would be a consequence. It might be a gift, a day at the spa, or some quiet time at home, but there would be a consequence. Still, they watched because it was enjoyable. Shannon knew this was her life. People had always told her family and her how beautiful she was. She had a special mix of qualities that made her stand out. She was used to being noticed, being the center of attention and winning competitions, being the chosen one. She wanted to live up to that. But as Theo was learning, Shannon was much more than that. She was smart, thoughtful, curious about the world and the environment, and very mature for her age. She cared about people and the world around her. Theo had judged her too quickly. She never judged anyone before getting to know them. That evening, while sitting around a table on the patio, talking and laughing in the nice breeze, Doris quietly asked, "So, you and Theo?" "Oh, he is almost everything I want in a partner, and my family likes him a lot. But I'm starting a 6-year study program. I'm part of a sisterhood and will be joining the cheer squad. Theo is doing well in his career, and he is successful with what he does, which he really enjoys. I know I could love him deeply, but I need to focus on my studies for the next 6 years. I won't ask him to wait for me. By then, many people will have been attracted to him, and from what I've seen over these 2 nights, he seems to get attention quite easily. So, as hard as it will be, we will say goodbye tomorrow to focus on our own lives. Now, if he's still available in 6 years, I will go after him like no one else. But I know that's a long shot. So, we will part ways. I'll take some time to feel sad about it, and then move forward with my life, hoping he will be happy and doing well." The 3 mothers had tears in their eyes, realizing this young woman was wiser than many people twice her age, and they could see that she and Theo would make a wonderful pair someday. If only. The mood at their end of the table grew serious, and the men were losing their energy, so they decided to call it a night. On the way home, I asked her what happened, and she shared. Doris asked me, and I told her. This was a talk I was worried about, but she handled it for me. I almost disagreed, but her reason was solid, so I just held her close as we drove back to the trailer. We only had that night, but we made the most of it. The next morning, she left feeling sad because I had shown her a new kind of closeness, making love. It was the best experience she had ever had, and she wanted that every night forever. I felt the same way. I don't know if she cried for a week because we had agreed to keep in touch only to say she had arrived safely, followed by heart emojis. I replied with hearts too, and that was all. I became a big Red Raider football fan, hoping to catch a glimpse of her on TV, and she often appeared as one of the cheerleaders. I attended a few home games, sitting where she couldn't see me, but I could watch her with binoculars. I knew it was a bit sad, but I found it hard to let go of her. 2 years passed. I stopped looking for her after 6 months and met other women, but my heart remained free. Then Julie returned to the ranch, and everyone celebrated. Jewel Bean, an amazing doctor, was just as beautiful as her mother and aunt. She had a kind heart and worked with the local health organization to help people in her community. With shiny black hair, warm brown eyes, and a bright smile, she was fit and healthy. Standing 5'7" inches tall with long legs and an athletic figure, she looked great. While she didn't match Shannon's unique figure, she was still very attractive. We got along well from the start, and her parents were thrilled. After her fancy school experiences, Julie was happy to meet someone down to earth. She often told me that she had never felt the same way with anyone else, and just being around me excited her. Though it wasn't the same intense connection I had with Shannon, I didn't expect to find that again, and I hadn't, not even with Glenda and Cindy, who were my previous comparisons. But this was the best I had experienced apart from 2 women who were too old for me and one who was too young. I loved spending time with someone so smart and ambitious who was also kind to everyone she helped. She was attractive, intelligent, a good person, and she loved me. What more could I want? We took short trips to places nearby, as her work with rural health clinics and emergency rooms in Hobbs, Artesia, and Carlsbad didn't give her much free time. We enjoyed hiking around Guadalupe Peak, had a fun weekend in El Paso, and shared a relaxing 4 days at Big Bend National Park, with our campsite in Chisos Basin as our home base. When I finally proposed a year after she came back and we first met, she happily accepted. Doris, Jerry, Diane, and Tom had been helping plan the wedding for a whole year, so the busy doctor didn't have to do much to create her dream wedding, and I was glad to let others handle what I knew little about. Living in the trailer in Orla wasn't ideal, so I spent some money to buy a nice 4-bedroom, 4-bath house on 2 acres in Carlsbad, and we started our life together. The wedding was too large for any local Episcopal church, so her parents improved their yard by adding sidewalks, a gazebo, and a dance area. Katrina and River acted as my family since mine wasn't invited. They found a band, organized the rehearsal dinner, and got tuxedos for me and my groomsmen. I would have been fine with just River as my best man, but Julie wanted to include Shay Lynn and some old friends from school and medical school, so I had to find more people. Other than River and the Bean brothers, my closest friend was Abe, who agreed to be part of the wedding. The co-workers I had been with all those years kindly declined, knowing the drama it could cause. So I reached out to Chad, who I had kept in touch with from time to time. He was my investment advisor, realtor, landman, and attorney. While none of them were considered good friends, they were young, single, or divorced, and happy to be invited for various reasons. Mostly, they wanted to meet interesting people who could potentially become clients, and helping me might benefit them later. As Chad described it, the bachelor party at the man camp, so my friends could celebrate my wedding with me, was pretty dull. For the guys at the man camp, a feast of kegs of beer, barbecued goat, beans, rice, and rich brownies made with Mexican chocolate felt like a great party. For Chad and the more sophisticated crowd, a bachelor party in Las Vegas was the real deal, with flashy entertainment that they found exciting. Or anywhere there were entertainers, but Las Vegas, where Julie's bachelorette party took place, was the favorite. They woke up the next morning with bad headaches from the mezcal and remembered that many stories had been shared about the groom, even if they couldn't recall the details. Julie's friends came back full of energy, but Julie was quieter and more reserved than usual in the week before the wedding. Her friends returned to the ranch on Thursday, and everything was set for the Friday rehearsal and Saturday wedding. I walked straight ahead toward my future, but Julie had sudden doubts that her mom, aunt, and maid of honor had to help her with. On Friday, she pushed those feelings aside and moved forward, looking beautiful and often assuring me of her love. The rehearsal and dinner went perfectly, although the toasts to the groom from the Bean brothers and their wives stretched the limits of good taste for some guests, while the drunken toasts from Julie's friends hinted at awkward moments from Las Vegas that should have stayed there. My first doubts started to creep into my mind. It became clear over the evening that the guests from West Texas and eastern New Mexico and those from New England were very different. The Easterners seemed to look down on the Westerners, who found their attitudes amusing. An anxious Julie found herself stuck in between and wasn't enjoying her own wedding as much as she hoped. I tried to support her, but she seemed a bit embarrassed by my efforts. I hoped that the attitude of some guests would fade once the more critical ones left. Here, a man takes care of his partner, and she does the same for him. The wedding went smoothly. After the rehearsal incident, only family and key people could speak at the reception, no wild rants or shared secrets this time. River went last, and there were only a few dry eyes left when he shared a story about a troubled 18-year-old who had worked hard to find a job, becoming a successful businessman and a source of pride for his family. The few dry eyes in the crowd were often rolled. Those born into wealth who lived in upscale neighborhoods were not as moved by stories of rising from nothing as the Texans and New Mexicans were, whose own family stories were likely similar to mine. Those who had been by my side for those 10 years, helping me grow into a man like Glenda and Cindy, were very proud of me. We spent our honeymoon along the beautiful west coast of Mexico and Baja. During this time, Julie discovered that letting go of her worries led to much joy and laughter, and she found out that I had a few surprises up my sleeve. Any doubts she had before our marriage seemed to melt away on the warm sands of the Pacific, or in our cozy space on the balcony. Dr. Carr returned to Carlsbad feeling happy and refreshed, ready to face the challenge of helping those in need in the rural health clinics of New Mexico. Julie and Theo were well known and often invited to important social events in the 3 cities where she worked. She felt happy and content with our life together, even if her busy schedule didn't always match mine, and I felt okay. But something was still missing. We had dreams of having 2 or 3 children and were approaching our 30s, but Julie wasn't ready yet. She couldn't quite explain her feelings to me, which left me feeling uncertain for the second time. One day I noticed an ordinary envelope on her desk, but beside it was an engraved invitation that caught my attention. I picked it up and saw that she was invited to her 10th high school reunion in 2 weeks. She hadn't mentioned it, so I asked her. "I don't think I want to go, Theo," she said. "I don't really know many of those people anymore, and I'm not sure I want to go back to high school. I was the shy one who studied a lot, not the cheerleader or popular girl. I didn't go on many dates, and I'd rather forget the ones I did." "Forget about the high school stars, honey. How many of them are doing well now? We can choose to go or not, but I thought since 2 of your classmates were at our wedding, you might want to see them and catch up. You look amazing now, and I'm sure none of those old classmates look as good as you do." She seemed to brighten up a bit and said she would talk to her friends about going together. I felt pleased that I could help her see it in a different light. Then, 2 days later, I received an unexpected invitation for a reunion myself. I had no idea how they found my address. Julie must have opened it, and knowing I rarely spoke about my hometown or school, she was excited. "So if we're going to my reunion, we are definitely going to your reunion too." I calmly told her that one reunion had nothing to do with the other, and reminded her that no one from my high school or family had been in our wedding, but she was determined, and I wasn't changing my mind. Julie has a way of convincing people. In fact, Dr. Carr can be quite persuasive. Carr is just as good at using her charm as her mother and aunt. She knows how to get what she wants. Although I was aware of her tactics, I enjoyed our time together. We shared moments of closeness that made me happy, even if certain boundaries remained in place. One challenge she presented was the idea of not renewing her birth control pills after this cycle. This was something that made me consider an agreement I never thought I would make. So we got ready for 2 special gatherings that were 5 months apart. After our wonderful getaway, our connection remained strong for weeks. But her responsibilities to help the sick and injured in 3 cities, along with the emotions she carried and the long hours she worked, took a toll on her. We found ourselves meeting a couple of times a week, where she used our time together to relax and forget her worries. Saturdays became our special day, where we enjoyed each other's company more intensely. However, her job sometimes kept her away. Emergencies in nearby towns or night shifts at the hospital made it hard to see each other as much as I wanted. That meant our intimate moments shifted in tone, becoming less frequent. With our special reunion coming up, we had a week filled with closeness, which was both satisfying and a bit troubling. If she could set aside her duties and feelings when she wanted something, why not at other times? Things slowed down a bit after my agreement, yet it was still a period that kept me happy. Car and her friends planned everything for the reunion, including what we would wear to the noon meet and greet, the reunion itself that evening, and the special lunch the next day. I needed new suits for work anyway, so it was an easy choice to fly us to Dallas for a shopping weekend. With my patience tested, I kept a smile on my face as I went through her busy decision-making process for 8 hours on Saturday. Despite having a doctorate, she struggled with making choices. When we got to her favorite store, I made her tell me exactly what she was looking for. She described the perfect outfit for our meet and greet, the ideal dress for the reunion, and an outfit for the Sunday lunch that would make her stand out. I couldn't help but wonder what happened to the girl who didn't want to go to this reunion at all. Now she was eager to shine brighter than everyone else, even considering the perfect swimsuit in case we had time for the pool at the hotel. I'm sharing something that really happened. I told the salesgirl exactly what the lady wanted to buy. The salesgirl brought out a cool jumpsuit, and it looked great on her. The color, size, and fit were perfect. But the lady wanted to try on more outfits. We spent hours looking, but nothing looked as good as the first one, which matched her description exactly. After 2 hours, I quietly asked the salesgirl to bring back the first jumpsuit. We both complimented her a lot, and even a lady passing by with her husband said how nice it looked. The husband seemed impressed, so she decided to set that one aside and look for a dress. Suddenly, Mandy, our salesgirl, returned happily with a little black dress. It seemed made just for her. The dress had a shiny sparkle, similar to her dark hair, and it hugged her shape perfectly. It showed off her shoulders and arms as well as her figure. She looked amazing. In fact, I had never seen her look so good in clothes. Mandy also handed her a pair of stylish black heels that made her legs look great, and it's clear several guys nearby thought so too. She twirled in front of the full-length mirror, struck a few poses, and finally asked, "What do you think?" Before we could respond, people around started cheering and saying things like, "You look fantastic." Smiling, she said, "Add this dress to the first outfit and let me try on a few more." I was almost overwhelmed, but Mandy just said, "Of course, I have more things that will look great on you." Look great? She's 5'7" and wears a size 4. Everything will look good on her. We really tried on a lot until I mentioned we needed something for the luncheon soon. I also said I was going to buy the navy jumpsuit and the little black dress, regardless of her choice, and asked if she wanted anything else. She smiled and said, "No, those are my favorites too. Let's find something light for tomorrow morning." I noticed Mandy's shift might have changed, but she stayed focused, and I planned to give her a big tip if we finished before closing. Fortunately, the pretty white floral sundress she brought out next was exactly what we wanted, and we managed to leave an hour before closing. I gave Mandy 3 $100 bills as a thank you, and she handed me her card with her phone number on the back, saying, "In case I can help you again?" I put it in my pocket. I'm not unfaithful, but I do like redheads, and who knows what the future holds. Plus, I might need someone to help Julie shop again, and Mandy knows her stuff. I had nearly an hour for shopping, but it didn't take that long. Surprisingly, she agreed with all my choices, even the 2 suits I could pick up the next afternoon after their alterations. She was so happy that we went to a bar and grill near our hotel. We ate, drank, danced, and spent time together, enjoying each other's company. She was getting really good at creating special moments, and lately she seems to be trying new things. One position she used to avoid has become one of her favorites, and I enjoy being close to her during these moments. After a late breakfast, we went shopping again. I helped her pick out a string bikini for a beach trip. Then, I tried on my suits, and we caught our flight home. That bikini showed how much my wonderful wife has changed, which is exciting but also a little surprising. The reunion for the Preparatory Academy of Albuquerque class of 2012 inches began at noon on Saturday in Ballroom A at the Marriott Hotel. We had already paid our fees, so we received badges with our pictures on them. Julie chose a recent photo instead of one from high school, although senior pictures were displayed on bulletin boards. After seeing hers, I understood why. She was nervous as could be, but I encouraged her and held her hand as we moved around the room until her two friends arrived with their husbands. They greeted each other warmly and went off to find more friends, leaving me holding her purse and yearbook. That left me with the men, but they were mostly focused on mixing drinks and chatting, which gave me time to look through Julie's yearbook. It was a bit childish. Honestly, our yearbook back at Cowtown High was better. Still, I found some interesting bits of information. There was a note that Julie, who was quite studious, had a small romance with the football team captain, but it seemed to end awkwardly in the spring just before prom. She wasn't in any prom photos, so I figured she didn't go. I also noticed that a few boys who wrote in her yearbook called her by a nickname. Knowing about cousin Shay Lynn made me uneasy. I noticed the tall man right away when he entered. Captain Tom Rawlings was still the same height he had in his yearbook photos, but he looked much bigger now. His friend was hard to recognize. She looked more like a player than a cheerleader. But when people rushed to greet them, I figured out who she was. I searched for my wife, who I thought looked way cuter than anyone else. I found her shyly hiding behind a display board. I walked over, gently took her arm, and asked her who the large couple was. She giggled, squeezed my arm, and led me away. We wandered past several display boards and found a small group of professionals, CPAs, nurses, teachers, engineers, and scientists. They were genuinely excited to see Julie, now Dr. Julie Bean Carr, and pleased to meet me. Conversations started. People shared their accomplishments while admiring Julie's achievements at Johns Hopkins and her decision to help those in need in her community. As a businessman, I didn't interest them much, but they appreciated our efforts to clean up the old oil fields, which earned me a bit of respect, maybe not nerd, but close. We were enjoying ourselves away from the crowd of attractive people who were drinking and sharing the same old stories they told every weekend at Charlie's Bar or somewhere like it. These people looked fit and capable, telling tales of sports, even though they had lost many games in school. It seemed quite a feat to lose 30 basketball games in a row amid poor football and baseball records. Meanwhile, my beautiful wife looked fantastic in her fitted jumpsuit, which flattered her shape nicely. While they were lost in drinks and stories, we were engaged in worthwhile conversations and everyone seemed content. But then the peace was disrupted. I saw the annoyed expression on the leading CPA's face, along with the worry on his wife's face, just before a loud voice interrupted. Well, what are you all doing hiding over here? Don't you want to catch up with your old friends? His voice drew attention from the crowd and made Julie cringe. Actually, we're with our old friends, the CPA, Arnold, replied firmly. We're catching up and enjoying ourselves. Perhaps we can keep to our own groups and let everyone have their fun. There were athletes and cheerleaders in one group, while the nerds and geeks gathered in another. Captain Tom seemed a bit offended, but he laughed as he said, "Oh, come on. Some of you used to hang out with the popular crowd like old JB over there." Julie blushed at the mention, and everyone chuckled. I stepped closer to the heavier guy and frowned as I asked, "Did they not have a program for dyslexia when you were in school here?" He acted tough and replied, "Who are you and what do you mean by that?" "I'm Theo, Dr. Julie Bean Carr's husband. My question was simple. Did PAA not have a dyslexia program? It seems like you have trouble with initials, which might mean you have dyslexia." "What?" he said, but then caught on and laughed. "Oh, you mean BJJB? Nah, that was just our nickname for her in high school." His friends joined in the laughter. I stepped closer, trying to get through to him. I warned quietly, "You're not in high school anymore, and if you mess up again, you're going to be in real trouble, and it won't be pretty." He looked like he had faced challenges before, but he seemed worried this time, especially with his friends beside him. I glanced at the three of them and chuckled. "You guys better think carefully. You only get one chance each. After that, things will get rough." And I'm not letting Dr. Carr or Nurse Cantu help you. They seemed surprised at my boldness, so I gave them an ultimatum. You have 2 choices and 10 seconds to decide. Either go back to your side, have a drink, and forget this whole thing, or take a chance and face the consequences. The clock is ticking. One of the heavy guy's friends tugged at his arm and said, "Come on, let's leave these folks to talk about science fairs and have some fun." A chuckle swept through their group, and they walked away, laughing at the nerds and geeks. My energy was high, making it hard to stand still. I took my lovely wife's arm and turned back to our side. So, where were we? Julie was staring at me surprised, while the others looked at me with a mix of admiration and fear. Arnold and a muscular guy introduced as Sergeant Bill Adams from the New Mexico State Police, who was married to Amy Alderman, glanced my way and showed they were on my side, but they didn't think I'd need help. I laughed and said, "Only if I needed help getting my boot back out of his way. Those 2 and their friends couldn't handle even a simple playground game. They would be too out of shape." Now, let's change the subject. Karen, you were telling us about how you engage seniors with government and economics. We enjoyed the last half hour of the meet and greet, and I noticed how everyone wanted to stay close and interact, eager to catch up before the event ended. While Julie was saying goodbye, Sergeant Adams had a word with me. "Tonight things might get a bit rowdy, and we're bringing in a couple of extra officers just in case. Can you help cover the cost for the extra security?" "I can help with the costs. Just let me know how much. Also, I need to know about self-defense laws. If someone starts trouble, I want to make sure I can protect myself and others legally." "Sure," he replied. "I'll also find out why there seems to be an issue with some folks here, especially regarding your wife, and I'll get back to you. Let's exchange numbers to keep in touch." Dr. Carr and I were in a crowded elevator when she leaned close, whispering about how safe she felt with someone willing to stand up for her. This reaction wasn't new to me. It was something I'd seen before. People often feel a deep gratitude when they're defended. Despite the rough reputation of some attendees, it was clear they had no right to disrespect anyone, especially not my wife, who had worked hard to become a respected doctor. These guys, on the other hand, hadn't done much with their lives and were just causing trouble. Respectful, skilled professionals, whether doctors, lawyers, or any other respected role, deserve respect, and I was there to ensure they got it, hopefully with the help of the officers. But one way or another, respect would be maintained. My thoughts were interrupted when my wife came over to me, ready to call it a night, her eyes tired but happy after the long day. We prepared for bed, leaving the day's troubles behind. Stray cats from the neighborhood gathered outside, drawn by the calls of a female cat. And for the first time since we met, she really took a lot of my energy. I took a short nap while she enjoyed a relaxing bath and styled her hair before waking me. I shaved, showered, used some aftershave and deodorant, and dressed up in my new black suit and dress shoes. She took a little longer to get ready, but when she appeared in that lovely black dress, my heart raced. With her beautiful hair flowing in curls and looking stunning, she easily outshined everyone else. She noticed my reaction, turned around to give me a complete view, and playfully asked, "What do you think?" "I think that dress is going to turn heads when we get there. Are we late enough, or do we have time for a quick moment?" She smiled widely and assured me that tonight would be even better than earlier, then tried to take my arm. I jokingly asked, "Are you going without anything underneath?" She giggled and replied, "No, but they are very small and smooth, so it looks like I am. Now stop teasing and let's go. We're already past being fashionably late." She certainly made an impression with her confidence, and I felt like a regular guy with a princess by my side. This was a new experience for her, and I was loving it. I really admired my dedicated doctor, but it was nice to be seen with someone so beautiful. Petunia, the head cheerleader, looked surprised, and her friends were wide-eyed. Captain Tom wasn't happy to see someone he had dismissed looking like a movie star, but all I could see in his friends' faces was admiration. A couple of her former wedding party friends were chatting with the popular crowd from years ago, but when they noticed Julie, they quickly shifted their attention. They might not have kept their figures, but being with her was definitely better for them than sticking with the old cliques. The crowd was much larger than at noon, with a mix of groups that seemed less divided than before. I was glad to see regular people there and looked forward to getting to know some of them better. As it turned out, I already recognized a few people. I knew a couple of researchers and several familiar faces from years past who had grown and achieved great things, including two I had known well before they got married. Julie and I became the center of attention, sharing stories and enjoying our time with a lively group of guests. When the awards started, everyone knew who would win Most Changed. She enjoyed her moment in the spotlight, shining brightly while attracting attention from the men and making women think about getting healthier. I wondered if she truly deserved it, especially if the 2011 cheer squad was full of larger girls. Calling her Miss Corpulence would have been rude, so Julie took the prize instead. As I mentioned, I had spent time in tough bars before giving that up for Lent, so I was alert in this setting. Yet I almost missed Julie flinching and looking away. I glanced at the wall mirror to keep an eye on things behind me, then saw him. Without the look of someone who is used to privilege, he seemed quite ordinary. He was of medium height and build, with brown hair and eyes, or so it looked from across the room. Still, people stepped aside for him and treated him with respect as he headed toward the bar. He got a drink and wandered over, stopping to chat with others on his way. The band played, but only a few were dancing. Most people were still busy catching up and meeting new friends. The ordinary-looking man approached my wife, tapped her shoulder, and said, "Let's dance." She closed her eyes for a moment, but found the courage to turn and take his hand. I stepped in between them. "Hold on a second. I'm Theo Carr, and that's my wife you're speaking to. Where I'm from, a gentleman asks the husband before asking the wife to dance. Did you forget that? Or are you not a gentleman?" He seemed more annoyed than angry. "Do you know who I am, Mr. Carr? My grandfather was governor and my father was a senator. I don't need to ask your permission for anything. Now step aside or it will be a mistake." I laughed in his face, which turned a bright shade of red, and looked him up and down. "I must have missed your name and the list of your achievements. As for your threats, go ahead and try." He turned and nodded to a big man standing nearby. Eddie walked over to him. Quietly, he said, "Mr. Higgins, this is Theodore Monroe Carr, the owner of Secure LLC. That is his wife. Perhaps you should ask someone else to dance." The look he gave Eddie was filled with disdain, and he looked at me even more distastefully. "I could care less who he is. I'm dancing with Julie, and you can either move him aside or find a new job." "No problem, sir. You can call your security firm and replace me if the owner agrees. I would say it was nice working with you, but it wasn't. And good luck with your plans," Eddie replied. "You insolent fool, I'm making sure you never work in security again." I started laughing, and Eddie laughed too. Higgins turned even redder. A group of people moved over to see what was happening, probably hoping to watch me get into trouble. Julie took this moment to slip past me and said, "Please, Theo, there's no need to be rude to Mr. Higgins. He's an important person in New Mexico. I'll dance with him just once, and then this will end without hurting your reputation." "You know, Julie, I would have let him have one dance if he had just asked. Now he has no chance of that." Higgins sneered and angrily said, "You lowlife! Julie comes from a good family, and we will be married as soon as she gets divorced from you. We've been together for months, and we're in love. Why do you think she has been staying overnight in Artesia so much? She has been with me." That hurt, but it didn't really shock me. There had been signs along the way, and I guess I had been slowly figuring things out even if I didn't want to admit it. I turned my head, saw her face, and knew he was telling the truth. Tom and his friends started making noise, probably not understanding the situation. I spoke to Eddie over my shoulder. "Why does he think he's tough?" "He's been practicing karate since he was a kid. He has a colored belt." "Okay, let's keep the others out of this and we'll see if karate is better than barroom fighting." Turning back to Higgins, I said, "You can keep her, but first we need to see who's really in charge here, in this place or outside." Julie began to protest, but he took off his jacket and tossed it aside, then tried a surprise kick, expecting to end things quickly. I blocked it and sent him spinning. He had good form, but he wasn't very strong. I laughed at him. He pretended to kick and then threw a punch at my face. I moved my head aside, caught his arm, and bent it back. He shouted in pain, and I pushed him away, letting go of his arm. I laughed again, and this time a few people joined in, showing that Jack wasn't very liked. Now he was really angry. He jumped and kicked, throwing wild punches and shouting that he would beat me. I stepped just out of reach, teasing him, until he tried to trip me. Okay, not happening. I stepped in while he was off balance, hitting him in the stomach, then in the side when he bent over. When he straightened up, I pressed my thumb against his throat. He grabbed his neck, struggling to breathe and looking scared. I pretended to punch him again and then stood back, letting him recover. When he turned to leave, I lifted him off the ground with my big Lucchese boots. My toe accidentally hit him, and he let out a loud scream before getting sick on the floor. The fight ended with him curled up on the ground. Without hesitation, I turned around, shouted a Texas rebel yell, and ran toward the people nearby who scattered like they had heard a loud noise. I chuckled at their panic and then faced my wife, who looked shocked at the man she had been with. I can drop your things off at your parents' place or leave them here. You can stay with him, go home, or do whatever you want, but don't come back here. Text me when you've decided, but don't call. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Please, Theo, let me explain. Explain? No way. You did what you did, and I really don't care why. You are out of my life right now, and you'll get the papers confirming that on Tuesday. Now, what should I do with your things? Leave them here or take them to Jerry's? The shock was wearing off and reality was kicking in. She tried again. Please, just let me talk to you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. No talking right now, I said. That time is over. Since you can't decide, I'll leave your stuff in the room. Call your parents and tell them why you need a ride from Santa Fe. I'm sure they will be happy to help. I took a couple of steps to stand over a well-known person in New Mexico and made a phone call. Chad, sorry to interrupt your Saturday night, but I need you to take care of a few things on Monday morning, okay? He asked. You sound upset. What's happened? Not much, but I just found out my wife has been unfaithful, so please put a hold on Jack Higgins's business property and house, stop any donations to his father's campaign, and send them to his opponent. Anyone who raises someone like Jack doesn't deserve my support. Let me make sure I got this right, Chad replied. Your wife is being unfaithful with Jack Higgins. You want to put a hold on his property and stop his father's donations, is that it? That's it for now. Let me know when it's done, please. And say hi to your family for me. Talk to you Monday. The group was back in their corner, drinking and chatting about how they could have taken me on, but felt sorry for me with my unfaithful wife. The people nearby who had witnessed my confrontation with Higgins and Julie stepped back, maybe scared to get involved. Except for Arnold and Sergeant Adams, who stood strong with smiles on their faces. Bill Adams reached out his hand and said, I looked you up this afternoon and they were right. That was impressive. That guy couldn't even hurt a flower. He must practice with kids if he thinks he's tough. We shook hands, and then I shook with Arnold, who smiled and said, in case he tries anything, I recorded everything on my phone, except for the last few seconds. I missed that part. I'll send you a copy. Eddie joined me as I left the ballroom. I tried to tell him, boss, but he thinks he knows it all. I know, Eddie, and I'll make sure your next assignment is with someone who's worth it. Eddie helped me pack and carry my bags to my truck. As soon as I got on the interstate heading east, I called Jerry to share my story. He was shocked and upset about his daughter's actions and asked me to repeat it for Doris. She didn't seem as surprised, but she apologized. I thought I should find out if she knew about her daughter's choices. It would make our relationship complicated. The anger kept me awake on the way to Carlsbad until I decided to let it go. I couldn't control what happened, so why stress over it? I slept until 10 and thought about going to Glenda's for lunch, but I decided it was better not to get in the way of her and the man she cares for. He's a good guy, and I hope they are happy together. Still, I could use a friend, so I didn't want to involve River. Instead, I ordered a lot of pizzas, buckets of chicken, and 3 cases of beer, then headed to my trailer at the camp. I knew my friends would appreciate a Sunday meal. They certainly did. I shared my story, and we had a great time as the night went on. They helped me to my trailer and got me on the bed, leaving my boots off. Monday was tough, and my hangover was just one of the problems. Tom and Diane called to hear my side of the story. It seemed their niece had a different version. I sent them Arnold's recording and said we could talk later, but I needed to call my divorce lawyer. Tom and Diane didn't call back, and neither did Jerry and Doris. My divorce lawyer was recommended by my groomsman, and he was happy to have the recording. He mentioned that more proof would be helpful since cheating is a reason for divorce in New Mexico if there's enough evidence. I told him I had a team ready to look into the situation right away, and he briefly explained community property in New Mexico. I wasn't clear on how things would turn out, but she made it clear she wanted separate bank accounts, investment funds, and retirement plans because she thought some of my business moves were too risky. I never finished studying for the law exam, much less took it. But I understood a bit about the law, so I spent some time reading and felt okay about it. She really made things harder for herself if she thought she could take any of my stuff, what with keeping everything separate and not being faithful. Tuesday was tough because Dr. Bean received the divorce papers, and both she and my mom were really upset. Jerry was too shy to say much, but he did ask me to think about changing the reason for the divorce to irreconcilable differences if Julie agreed to everything. I said I would think about it, but I couldn't help but laugh when I got off the phone. By the second week, the investigation was done. I told them to send it to my lawyer because I didn't want to know all the details. Senator Higgins called me, said he had cut ties with his son, and asked if I would think about stopping the liens and my donations to his re-election campaign. I said I would think about it, and I did, for a brief moment. After a few more beers and long talks with friends, I finally agreed to meet with Katrina, knowing she'd try to change my mind. She did, but when I offered to share the tape and report from the investigation, she backed down, just asking if I could consider irreconcilable differences so her reputation wouldn't suffer too much. I pointed out it was her own doing, but I said I would think about it. And I did. I didn't dislike her personally, just her choices, so what would I lose by changing a few words and getting her signature? I called my family law lawyer and we discussed it. 2 days later, a courier brought me the signed divorce and settlement papers, and I just had to wait 30 days for the judge to sign off on it. I celebrated that night and decided to put the house in Carlsbad up for sale. The trailer was all I needed since I had offices in 2 states and River's credit card. Funny enough, when I checked the mail at the house before leaving, I found a receipt and tickets for 2 people for a meet and greet dinner and reunion for the Cowtown High School Cowpunchers. I laughed and tossed it in with the rest of the mail to deal with later. 3 days after my divorce was finalized, and 4 days after my lobbying efforts at the state capitol began, I came home to find a brand new stylish black Jeep Wrangler parked in my space. It looked a lot like a truck that had been parked there a few years ago, and my heart was racing as I got out of my pickup and noticed a party in my newly fenced backyard. The grill was hot, chairs were scattered everywhere, and a crowd was gathered around a woman with bright blonde hair who was sitting on a table. I dusted off my clothes and walked casually around back. Wow, I thought I'd have to do all the cooking. We prepared a feast, so you need to grab a drink and help with the food. The wandering daughter has come back. And she really had. I couldn't believe how much more beautiful she looked. Grown-up Shannon was so striking that I found it hard to approach her, and she didn't greet me. Her face was neutral and her posture said the same. I felt like I wasn't important to her. Finally, I said, "I see you're all grown up. How do you feel about older men, especially a recently divorced one?" "That depends. I know many divorced older men, and I don't judge them as a group. Anyone can make mistakes. But I do feel hurt by old friends who disappear for years, whether married or not." I thought that was what you wanted when you left last time." "Really? Then why did you keep an eye on me and come to games without saying hello? Remember what you said? No contact? I was 18 and you were 24. Why let me make the choices?" Juan jumped in with some Spanish words telling me to stop being foolish and apologize for being stupid. Shannon added, "Really," in agreement. When did she learn Spanish? She still looked serious, but the smallest hint of a smile appeared on her lips. That was all I needed. In a couple of strides, I was there, wrapping her in my arms and admitting that I was a fool when it came to her. She laughed and told me to remember that in the future, then hugged me tightly against her. Standing there on the dry plains of West Texas, holding the girl of my dreams, with friends celebrating her return, my heart was full of love and gratitude. I couldn't see many of my friends, but those I could either had tears of joy in their eyes or big smiles. I think I had both. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.